Afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the holiday version of a Regent meeting. Thank you all for spending time with us today. We know you make this a priority, and we appreciate that. We know that's against an otherwise really busy schedule. I'll have a few comments after the minutes, and my chair's report is as always. But before that, let's warm ourselves up by the traditional review of the minutes, as I always say. Are there any comments or corrections about the minutes?
Sir, I'd move we approve the minutes.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Oh, the lights came on as you made that. Is there a second of the motion that's on the floor? Thank you, Regent Winter. All right, it's moved and seconded. We haven't had any discussion yet, but is there any from anyone? All right, hearing none, all in favor of approving the minutes from the last meeting indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're off to a wonderful start. The minutes are approved. So we'll now turn, well, first, I mean, as always, should ask for any introductions. Any introductions by anyone? Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Regents. I'd like to introduce Emporia State University's ASG President, Aswat Arif, today. I'll let you introduce the others in a moment. We're incredibly proud. Aswat is one of our international students from Bangladesh. We have a large group of students from Bangladesh. It's an interesting story that he's actually a legacy. Years ago, his mom came as a student. So we're incredibly pleased with the output and everything he and the team are working on. So thank you.
Thank you. That's very exciting. Thank you. So let's turn to our various reports. I get to go first with the chair report. As part of that, I'll mention just so we're all aligned with the way we approach these meetings. We are an open meeting, and we're very glad to welcome anybody who wants to participate. But we do not have open comment periods. We appreciate input from everybody. We believe we get them from our institutions, and we work hard to do those with skip meetings and other things when we do our campus visits as well. So in terms of the things I'd like to mention, again, hope you're all having a great holiday season. We had, of course, the shining moment over the last week or two with graduations. And so we'd like to recognize all the students that graduated and congratulate all of them. We had regents at various of the, if not all of the sessions that we historically do. And I can tell you the regents universally love going to graduation. And I believe everyone in the room that likes it because it's what we're very much about. And we see this mark of people accomplishing things, really realizing their own unique potentials in their own ways. And it just makes for lots of happiness. And so it's one of those special days of the year that we're celebrating everyone. And that feels really good. So again, congratulations to everybody that graduated, and thanks to everybody for all the work that helped all that to happen. In terms of our current events, our last meeting was followed by a campus visit at Kansas State. You all will recall that we were on a 2-year cycle to visit our 6 universities. So we did 3 a year. We did Wichita State earlier this year. We did K-State the last meeting. Thanks, President Linton and all your team. I think we had a wonderful visit. And we certainly were thrilled to get updated on all the great initiatives that are going on. Happens every time we're on campuses, and certainly happened last time. So thank you for all of that. And then tomorrow we meet with the students for our breakfast. Periodically, every meeting we have a meeting, the regents and one of our groups. So that could be the provost, it could be the business officers, could be the faculty senate, faculty and staff senates, students, et cetera. We think that's a great way to seek input and make sure we're communicating and have an open dialogue. So tomorrow's with the students. That's always a popular session as well. So we look forward to that. Students seeing you all tomorrow. So again, welcome to the meeting. Thanks for everything we've done across the year. We look forward to more great things together. We now are at the Council of Faculty Senate President's Report. So we'd ask Norman Phillip to make that presentation. Oh, there he is. I don't know. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Excuse me. I've made a terrible error. Thankfully, Blake is not sensitive at all. He won't care I skipped him. We'll actually hear on President CEO Flanders.
Yes.
On the President and CEO report.
Yeah, so two things. I'd like to thank Pittsburgh State University. They hosted the government relations retreat or offsite meeting that I got an opportunity to be a part of, and President Shipp opened that meeting as well. So thank you for doing that. I think it's important to recognize the work that our government relations directors do in the State House and beyond, and it's very important to our system to have that kind of support from our elected leaders. We also met this week with representatives from the Kansas Chamber and realized that we have a great deal of commonality and that we need to solve some of the workforce shortages that we have here in Kansas. And the way to do that is through some education beyond high school. Might be a welding credential, might be an associate degree. It also might be a baccalaureate degree or beyond. And we're going to continue to look for ways to collaborate with our business leaders as a part of Pillar 2 in our strategic plan. So that concludes my report, Chair Ice.
Thank you for that wonderful report. And the fact that timeout was called before you got to shoot didn't have any effect. A great report. So thank you. Now, please, you're another one that had to wait for a second. So.
Morning, Chairman Ice, President Flanders, presidents and regents as well. So happy to come before you now in December, speak on some of the efforts of the Council of Faculty Senate Presidents. So continuing on from what we spoke at when we were visiting the K-State campus, which we do appreciate them for hosting that. We're working towards our ongoing efforts towards an updated version of the KBOR Faculty Award, again, looking at adding in the additional faculty roles and responsibilities as these have evolved over time. And in addition, looking at adding a third award to include our full-time NTT or non-tenure track faculty in that as well. Also, we've been working towards continuing discussions on AI in higher ed. We're happy to report that there are various activities going on across all of our Kansas campuses, so that's good to see. In addition, some possibilities with some of the stuff to be presented later on Complete College America that may be able to tie into that as well. And lastly, in our lunch meeting today, we had a fairly engaged discussion regarding the First 15 initiative and a few other items that came across in the various committees this morning. Just wanting to let you know that we're doing our best to make sure that everything that is presented here at KBOR is brought back to our faculty, shared with them so that we're able to best keep an informed group across the state. And we're hoping to be able to bring forward any comments, questions, or potential ideas they may have to share with the board in the future as well. Other than that, that's what we've done in the short time since the November meeting. I'll stand for any questions.
Does seem like the days are flying by right now, doesn't it? Well, I don't know. I would just say before we have questions, we appreciate the efforts you're making for communication. That's certainly incredibly helpful always. And around initiatives, definitely so. And the overall support of our joint strategic plan, all of our strategic plan together. So any other questions or comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Student Advisory Committee report. Is that right, Blaine? Okay, all right. NX team, please.
Oh,
Hi.
hi everybody. So for the students, we are rounding out the end of the fall semester. Most of us are done. A few of us are still doing that last push till Friday. So we're all very excited for what will be a hopefully very restful winter break. Like all of you, we are beyond excited for tomorrow. And for you guys, we have the one holiday gift that I know you all want. A piece of paper with our goals and some lively discussion. So I hope you all are very
Excellent. Excellent.
gift. all of our goals that we have align with the goals that you guys set off at the beginning of the year. So we are just so excited to get to discuss those with you and see how we can collaborate further. Today, we also talked a lot about Higher Education Day, which is coming up in February. We're looking at potentially having some changes to what this event's going to look like, but regardless, we are very excited to have these topics and go to the Capitol and push for all of higher education. And of course, thank you all for coming to all of our graduations. I know that it's very exciting for students to see you all there and be able to interact with you, shake some hands, and all of that good stuff. So thank you to those of you who took the time to be able to go to these graduations. And of course, happiest of holidays. Does anyone have any questions for me?
I have one. So when you prep for the breakfast tomorrow,
Mhm.
how many times did you all think Regent Rolfe would remind you he was student body president?
I
Two
think,
times student body president.
ooh, I think he's gonna have to do it at least 3 times.
Yeah, okay.
I think at least 3. I'll have a little tally on my piece of paper to count and see how you do, but that's gonna be my bet. How does that sound?
Okay, that won't be a personal best for him. Any other comments or questions? Well, again, thanks for what you're doing. Appreciate the
Of
support. Look
course.
forward to seeing you
Thank so
tomorrow.
much. Yep.
And happy holidays to all of you too. Okay, now we're on to the standing committee reports. Regent Mendoza, or Chair Mendoza in this case, will you lead us off with academic affairs?
Yes, I sure will. So since the last board meeting, Basque has held 2 meetings. We met virtually on December 4th and again this morning, and we have been busy. At the December 4th meeting, we considered 2 items on the board's consent agenda today. One was a request from the University of Kansas to amend its academic calendar, and the other was from Rocky Vista University, a private for-profit institution seeking degree granting authority in Kansas. During the discussion of Rocky Vista's application, concerns were raised about clinical placements and how plentiful they were statewide. We tabled that conversation and asked academic affairs staff to gather information on the availability of clinical placements. Staff heard back from Wichita State and KUMC, and both acknowledged intense competition for clinicals and that this was a recurring challenge. Today, however, we approved Rocky Vista's application. Per Kansas state statute, if an institution meets the minimum requirements established in law, which Rocky Vista does, we must approve the application. The board has no discretion to consider other factors.
Yes.
Okay.
You're perfect. I'm
All
sorry.
right. Also, on the December 4th Basque agenda, we approved 6 new statewide transfer courses, which are also on today's board agenda. Those courses include Organic Chemistry 1 in Lab, Organic Chemistry 2 in Lab, Programming Fundamentals, Object-Oriented Programming, Calculus 2, and Differential Equations. We received the Transfer and Articulation Council Quality Assurance Report, the Private Post-Secondary Report, and the Qualified Admissions Report. The TAC report explained the process of reviewing and recommending courses for inclusion in the statewide transfer library. TAC is comprised of campus representatives from all sectors. TAC oversees the annual Kansas Core Outcomes Group, or KCOG, which consists of faculty from across the state who review courses in their disciplines for inclusion in the system-wide transfer process. In addition to approving Rocky Vista's university application for degree granting authority at today's meeting, as previously noted, we also received several updates. Vice President Rusty Manhala briefed us on the First 15 initiative. A work group has been formed, which met yesterday to work to identify 15 credit hours high school students can take at no cost to them. The work group will meet frequently in 2025 to develop recommendations for President Flanders. Dr. Jen Bonzracki updated the committee on the math pathways and English initiatives, which are progressing nicely. The focus for the spring semester will shift to institutions designing co-requisite support sections and gateway math courses as needed. While the fall KBOR sponsored professional development sessions have equipped institutions to move forward independently, KBOR staff will remain actively engaged in providing support. Sam Christie Dangermond updated us on the academic year 2025 performance reports, which are due by July 1st, 2025. We also discussed the components of this year's performance reports, which are spelled out in each institution's performance agreement. Vice President Munholland also briefed us on the Complete College America launch schedule for February 11th at Washburn University. February 11th is the Tuesday before the board meeting on Wednesday and Thursday. In addition to memorizing our memorializing our relationship with Complete College America. The day will include workshops led by CCA content experts on current K-Board initiatives. And that, Mr. Chair, completes my report.
Oh, when you start off, you've been busy. That was apparent.
Yes,
So
very
thank-
busy.
Thank you. Any questions, anyone? Yes.
Question on this Rocky Vista. I know based on the statute, we have to allow them to come into the state, but we have to approve every program, an additional program for our own state universities. Do we have to approve the programs that they're offering if they are duplicate to what our state universities are already doing?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so based on Commerce Clause, it would be, if there's competition, that would not be a reason for not approving the program. The program it would have to be an issue, maybe related to, I'm looking at the attorneys, but a quality issue or something like that. It could not be that we have a current program. You'd have to allow them to compete.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thanks again. All right. Chair Benson.
Mr. Chairman, Fiscal Affairs and Audit Committee has been busy as well. Conducted our agenda call on December 3rd and met again this morning. Started today's meeting by reviewing the items on today's board agenda. We discussed the housing and dining proposals with university at length last month, found the rates to be reasonable in light of inflation, particularly for food purchases. And we thank the universities for their work in keeping the increases as low as possible while managing the cost increases for operating the auxiliaries, maintaining the facilities, and updating equipment. Mr. Chairman, our committee voted to approve all of the items on today's consent agenda, as well as the university's housing and food service proposals, as well as the distributions of state funding for the universities for IT and cybersecurity and for our capital renewal initiative. Look forward to Director Bristow's presentation later today. We also heard from 5 of the state's two-year colleges about their fiscal year 2023 audit findings and their progress on resolving the identified issues. We thank them for their presentations today and appreciate the work that they are doing to improve compliance with federal financial aid and other federal grant programs, as well as striving to improve internal processes for management of their finances. We heard several times that staff turnover and loss of institutional knowledge poses a risk for all of our public institutions, but can be particularly impactful at the smaller campuses. So we talked some today about just the need for cross-training among our staff, because often you have a particular skill set tied up into one person, and then when that one person leaves, it can really leave you in a bind. So encouraging our campuses to not only cross-train, but to also collaborate with each other is extremely important. Next this morning, Kate Neely from the University of Kansas and Jamie Dalton from Pittsburg State University both did a great job presenting their audit plans for the coming year. We appreciate the efforts of audit staff to ensure campus-wide participation and minimizing risk to the universities. And lastly, this morning, Mr. Chairman, Vice President Frisbee gave a brief overview for the committee on how state funding for the universities used to be coupled with tuition revenue prior to fiscal year 2002. But since then, we functioned under a tuition ownership model as proposed by the Board of Regents at that time. So it was a good introduction to a valuable discussion, because obviously lots changed over the last 20, 25 years or so, and appreciate Vice President Frisbee giving us that overview for how and why the state's funding model is set up as it is. So that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman, and I would stand for any questions.
So on that last point, if there are materials, would you send them on? I'd be interested in seeing that too.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. And then really appreciate the way you're always very clear about where the committee stands on the items that come up later. So thank you for that. Any questions? All right, thank you. Okay, so I'm now going to ask Carl Ice to present the Governance Committee report and the retirement plan report. It was supposed to be at least mildly humorous. All right, so the governance committee meetings, it's good when they're straightforward and not real controversial. So we accomplished that today. We had primarily two items. You will all recall, the board passed a policy about enterprise risk management, which we believe was incredibly important and appropriate. That policy calls for ERM reports to be done by January. First one being this year. So we got an update on the status of that. And then after the first of the year, they'll have a summary. All the board members will have a summary of those reports. And then this is something that we would expect to evolve across time. It's just well done, rightly done when you're managing risk well. And then we also, as is our practice, we get an annual report from each campus on their safety and security measures and status. This was Emporia State this time, and we had a very comprehensive report from Emporia State, from Steve Levitt. Any questions about governance? All right, that takes us to the retirement plan committee. We last meeting we updated on a regularly scheduled meeting. We had a very brief meeting on December 9th. We put the over-under on that one at 10 minutes, and we beat it by being at 5. You'll recall in our retirement plans, we have 2 contractors or administrators called various things. One of those is Voya. Voya has proposed to lower its fee to 0.06% of plan assets from 0.08. Of course, you all are all quick, so you know that's a 25% reduction. So it didn't take us long to decide we would recommend to this group that we accept that reduction. So that'll be part of the agenda later today. Any questions on the retirement plan committee? Okay. So we've talked about a couple of these items already. I would ask, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So move.
Thank you, Regent/Chair Benson. Is there a second? Thank you, Regent Johnston. Any discussion about any of the items? All right, hearing none. All in favor, aye, please. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the consent agenda has passed. That, of course, takes us to the discussion agenda. We'll go back through the committees to start that off. So we start with academic affairs. Chair Mendoza, do you have anything, or do you write to Carla?
No, I'm going to call Carla up to talk about the new system-wide transfer courses that I mentioned earlier in my chair's report.
Great touch paths.
Hello. And I took the liberty of distributing this handout. I wanted to just give a little more background today on how we get to our system-wide transfer courses. At the top is the list of the criteria that we look for in system-wide transfer courses. The faculty attend the Kansas Core Outcomes Group meeting, and they will recommend courses. And what we found is sometimes the courses that they recommend don't meet the criteria that we look for. Maybe there aren't 12 institutions that offer those courses, or we also look at the number of majors that are requiring that. So we look at the top transfer majors in our system. So that's how we start, is the faculty start out and giving us in the reports that they write at the KCOG, they send us recommendations, and then we spend the next several months kind of researching those courses and making sure that they're appropriate for system-wide transfer. And then we ask the chief academic officers, once we come up with a list, we ask the chief academic officers to submit those courses as preliminary. And then we start planning for that next KCOG, because there will be 400 to 500 faculty members there. And the Wichita State University has been our behind the scenes, the logistics of that. And then we have one of our institutions kind of be the host that gives the welcome and different things. So I just kind of wanted to give you a little bit of background of how this cycle works, because we get these approved and then we start all over again. So that's what the Transfer Council will be doing. We have 10 members from the universities, 10 members from the two-year institutions on the Transfer Council. We meet monthly, 1 week before the board meets, to hammer out lots of these things. But we also have quite a few workforce development staff that assist in our meetings. And Regent Johnston is our board liaison for that. And Regent Johnson just happened to be one of our very first transfer and articulation council members way back in 2012 when the board voted to have 17 of our first courses and we had no outcomes written. So K-State hosted the very first one and the faculty wrote outcomes for 17 courses that first year. And since then, the cycle just continues. So today, the Transfer Council brings to you 6 courses. These courses are very important for some of our system-wide associate degrees. That is also going to play into which courses we select and we think are appropriate for system-wide transfer. So on page 64 of your board books is the list, the 6 courses. Regent Mendoza mentioned those as well. And we would ask that the board approve those courses for system-wide transfer.
Any questions? And then you'll recall that Chair Mendoza said the committee recommends or suggests or otherwise encourages us to approve this. So is there a motion? Thank you. Second? Thank you. Any discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor, aye, please. Any opposed? Okay, passes.
Thank you.
Congratulations, thank you. Okay, Regent Benson, the fiscal affairs are up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. While Vice President Frisbee makes her way to the podium, as you'll recall, at our November meeting, we had a first reading for the proposed housing and food service rate proposals as submitted by the state universities. As I mentioned in my report, the Fiscal Affairs and Audit Committee members discussed these with the universities at the November meeting. Certainly understand the price pressures that they have been under. Food cost alone, just nationwide, just in the last 5 years, have increased almost 30%. So we understand the cost of everything is going up. We felt like the proposals were adequate and in line and responsible. So our committee did unanimously recommend that the full board approve them as well. But I'll turn it over to Vice President Frisbee to add anything to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, so starting on page 65, you have the array of all of the universities' proposals. We do have some summary information at the front end. I just remind you that 5 of our institutions do require freshmen to live on campus, or some students, with some exceptions, of course. And 4 of our universities have contracted food service with third parties. KU and K-State have that in-house, and so they are trying to manage the inflationary effects on food in particular. But they do have costs to operate these auxiliary units, which, according to board policy, are to be self-sufficient enterprises within the university and not subsidized by other sources. And of course, part of having an in-house food service, of course, you've got kitchen equipment and facilities for your residence halls. So they have an array of expenses to manage for these auxiliaries. And hence the proposals you see for the coming fiscal year. We went over these a bit last month. If there are any questions, we'd be happy to help.
Questions? Okay, hearing none, we'd entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor of approving all these rates and packages, indicate by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, all right. Thank you, Vice President Frisbee.
Got one more.
Oh, I know she's not done, but I can thank her for that one, can't
I'll
I?
ask Vice President Frisbee. She does a great job of really setting this one up because it's something new. So you will kind of.
Thank you. So the next item is something that's been before you previously. This is the distribution of the rest of the state funding we have for fiscal year 2025 from the state legislature for the university's IT infrastructure and cybersecurity improvements. You might remember last summer, there was a proposal from the institutions to perform an audit, a review of where everybody is across the system relative to the NIST framework, which is referenced there in the middle of page 93. That is seemingly the gold standard for how an organization would evaluate itself for how well it's doing in fighting off cybersecurity attacks. Our IT folks have worked hard. They've labored over some meetings with our business officers to come up with a proposal that's before you today. They worked to prioritize those items that would attack at the most highest risk, and you'll see a list of references, some of those at the bottom of page 93. What I would emphasize on page 94 is that you'll see some costs identified in the middle of the page. Those do add up more to a total that's more than what you see at the bottom of the page. So the institutions will be spending and devoting some of their own resource to cover these expenses, but they feel that these are the most important priorities in things that need to be addressed. Every campus is at its own place, unique place to where it is in maturity or where they are with firewalls and purchases of equipment. So there isn't a consistency across the institutions that you see in that table. What the proposal is at the bottom of the page on page 94, and that would at least attack some of those items that the IT folks and the business officers would be seeking approval for.
And Mr. Chairman, I will point out that the committee was very encouraged by that collaborative effort between the business officers and the IT directors, looking for any way to leverage the system as a whole instead of each entity, kind of doing it as a one-off. And I believe they have a planning session coming up in January to further those talks. So we were very encouraged by that.
I was struck by that in reading it. I'm glad you said that. It came clear, and I think it's also really helpful that they demonstrated the whole landscape. That helps with the longer term plan for sure. So this is another item we need to approve if anybody has a motion.
Make a motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Second.
All right, I didn't give a chance for questions or discussion, so let's pause and do that. Any questions of anyone, and especially Vice President Frisbee, or any comments?
In terms of, I see the cost and I see some of the priorities listed there. How well is this gonna safeguard our systems, and how mature would we be after post this investment is made?
I'm not certain that I can answer that question from an IT perspective. What I would say is I would encourage those conversations to be offline and not in a recorded broadcast conversation. But when the institutions present their ERM reports to the governance committee, cybersecurity will be an element of those reports to the governance committee on how well their risk mitigation is going on.
Okay, thank you.
I think we could say in response to that, though, we are all collectively working towards the same set of guidelines and criteria to meet as defined by the state security level. And we're all driving to that same point.
Any questions? Okay, so we do have a motion on the floor. So all in favor of the motion, indicate by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. All right, so do you have an intro for Director Briscoe?
Bristow.
Well, I have one. This is unprecedented to be calling on Director Briscoe with no time pressure. Well, time pressure can come at any moment, of course.
You get chair ice. So you're saying take my time? Is that the direction here? Okay, fair enough. I appreciate that. Well, let's see. Just to highlight this discussion agenda item number 3, page 95, is to deliver the 2024 University Facilities Report. And this is the second official funded year of the board's Facilities Capital Renewal Initiative. And you've all received the report. It's also available on the KBOR website via a link. And there are quite a few slides today. I will keep a fairly brisk pace, but I would invite you to stop me if there's anything that you'd like to focus on along the way. There's just enough slides that, if you wait till the end, we could probably lose momentum. So please interrupt if anything catches your interest. So KSA 767103 requires the board to prepare and submit information about facilities every 2 years and submit that to the governor and the legislature. And in June of 2021, the board passed a new policy framework to support the facilities initiative. And with that, evolved the idea about what the interval for appropriate reporting on facilities would be, and decided that every year is most appropriate. And so this slide is just a diagram that shows that in the past, there's been 2 individual reports that go to the legislature every 2 years. Now there's one consolidated report that comes to the board for review every December. And in this report, then, we've got a educational building fund expenditures report. We've got the overall funding summary that is developed with additional state appropriations for the board's facilities renewal initiative. We've got the maintenance assessment calculations and projections. The board's policy framework established the maintenance assessment in 2021. It began in FY23. This is the second official year of that maintenance assessment. Also in the report this year is a building demolition summary. This is not just limited to 2024. We've looked at the first 3 years of appropriations for building demolition summary. And so you'll see 23, 24, and 25 information on that slide. Estimated current replacement value and renewal costs for the mission critical facilities. The maintenance assessment references that information that we update every year. And then, of course, building inventory. This is a building by building level look at the campuses, and a space inventory. Consider that a room by room look. And finally, utilization efficiency for classrooms and instructional labs. So to begin with, the university's FY24 expenditures for the Educational Building Fund, or EBF in short, can be referenced on pages 10 and 15 of the University Facilities Report. And here on this slide are just a few points that highlight the background of the Educational Building Fund. Educational Building Fund was created during the 1941 legislative session, codified into the state law with the statute that you see listed there. There have been adjustments and revisions, modifications over the decades, but the EBF has been the most stable and dependable source of funding for the state university facilities for the better part of 80 years. And it's somewhat unique among the states in terms of its approach to provide that consistent funding for the state university facilities. Currently, the EBF levies a 1 mil tax on all property for the state universities and a 0.5 mil for the state educational institutions, which are the School for the Deaf and the School for the Blind. And the annual income from the 1 mil levy currently exceeds $50 million, with another approximate $4 million from tax on motor vehicles. And so at the December 2022 meeting, the board approved an allocation of $50 million for the EBF to the state universities for FY 2024, and utilized the standard formula that goes back 15 years or so that we use to allocate the Educational Building Fund, the capital renewal funds in 23 and 24 and 25, and propose for the campus restoration funds, which we'll talk about later today. That calculation's based on square footage, complexity, and age of buildings. And so for this cycle, FY 2024, this university facilities report covers FY 2024. The universities have spent $48.6 million of educational building fund on various rehab and repair projects, which can be found in the report, pages 10 through 15. So as dependable as the Educational Building Fund has been for the universities, it it only generates about a third of what is needed by best practice to maintain the mission critical facilities. And this graph shows what's now commonly recognized as the deferred maintenance and renewal dilemma, which is very common to most public institutions and municipalities. The blue column here, you can see in the bar graph, the blue column represents the facilities and infrastructure needs of any given cycle. The yellow column represents what has been funded. The pink column represents what goes unfunded. And then as you look out at future cycles, whatever wasn't funded basically cumulatively adds to the next cycle's needs. The facilities and infrastructure have continued to age out in terms of their building systems, and the inflation effect on construction cost just snowballs. And so, which is why the board in 2020 started this facilities initiative to address this. And so this graph shows, starting in 2023, new additional state appropriations received, and looking out 10 years or so, the multifaceted funding approach to basically get to a 2% of the replacement value of facilities every year reinvested in those mission critical facilities, with the idea that from that previous slide, you're not adding to backlog liability each cycle. So you can see in these outer years, we're getting very close to that best practice target with the benefit of the partnership and additional funding that has been a part of the initiative so far, and then looking ahead here. So you can see the dark blue in the first 3 years are the 35 million and the 20 million and the 20 million state appropriations that require a match. The light blue for the next 6 years are the new program, the Kansas Campus Restoration Act, that also requires a match. And together with in-house operating expenditures on facilities and the Green Educational Building Fund, you see a funding stack that basically supports this initiative long-term. So this, on page 17 of the report, we will look at the maintenance assessment calculations. And the way that works is each year, the mission critical buildings have an estimated replacement cost that's calculated. It's based on RS Means construction cost data. And every year with inflation, that number increases. The number of mission critical buildings fluctuates too, of course. Some of the universities are taking buildings offline, and so that changes as well. But in this year 2 of the maintenance assessment, the 0.5% of replacement value requirement for annual reinvestment totals $41.57 million. That is up from the 0.25% required in the first year of about $19 million. So this gradual increase up to that 2% that we saw on the previous slide is what the board set a course for, that gradual increase up to the target over 6 years. And so this report covers year 2. And of course, the $20 million that was a part of this from the state appropriation for FY24 required the dollar for dollar match. And building demolition fund was also a part of that additional funding. As I said before, this building demolition is it's the lever that can take an effect on the mission critical portfolio. So that you can either increase the amount of funding year over year, but if you've got a lot of facilities that are underutilized, maybe they are not facilities that people want to spend much time in, but you still have them online, you're paying for operating costs, there's backlog needs. This is one way the universities have looked at that. Still represents a very small number of facilities. 27 buildings have received board approval for raising so far. About half of those or so have been raised. The others are in design and planning to be raised. But you can see what this does. It reduces the campus footprint by 626,000 square feet. It's pretty significant. And as significant is $95 million of deferred maintenance estimated taken offline. And this is just a visualization of those numbers compared to the entire portfolio. And you can see in the lighter colors here, so in the blue circle, 27 buildings have been allocated and designated to be taken down. 40 more is what the universities have preliminarily thought that they might be looking at over the next several years. We've heard from the universities that you've approved campus master plans for, and there's various considerations being given on those campuses to what they might want to take down in the future. You can see in the middle graph, and I won't mention the 1.57 billion just yet in the middle there, but you see the 95 million of deferred maintenance that's been eliminated by taking the 27 buildings offline. That 40 buildings might take another $250 million offline in terms of deferred maintenance liability. And then finally, over on the right-hand side, as I'm looking at it, or the yellow circle, you see the total square footage of the mission critical portfolio, 21.4 million, and then you can see the 626,000 square feet and maybe another million square feet that might go along with that next group of buildings. Still probably represents all in less than 5% of the total portfolio, but takes a significant amount of deferred maintenance and renewal cost offline. And so 1.57 billion is the current estimated cost to renew the mission critical buildings to a state of good repair, or we're calling it an 80% renewal. And that is up from last year, which was 1.3 billion, up from the year before, 1.2 billion. This is expected. This is not a surprise. We knew that this number is going up, and if it hadn't been for the additional investment over the first 2 years, that would be even higher. The FCI, or Facilities Condition Index, 0.35, that is worse. That's a quotient that's calculated by dividing the renewal needs, deferred maintenance needs, by the estimated replacement cost. And so the higher that quotient, the worse we're getting, the lower, the better. So you can see our goal long-term is to get the mission critical portfolio to a state of good repair, or a 0.2 FCI. Call it a B+, just for ease of understanding there. And as we look at now you can just see this broken out by each university. This is each university's share of the estimated renewal cost to take their mission critical portfolio to that state of good repair. It's probably no surprise in terms of the number of buildings that each of the universities have. That kind of falls in a logical order. And then breaking this out, I don't know if it's completely obvious, but all the universities have a common experience in that a majority of the cost of their backlog is in heating, ventilation, air conditioning, electrical, plumbing, exterior, and some interior repairs. There's fire protection and equipment needs and some other various needs that get pretty specific, but everybody has experience in those buildings, and I think can understand how those building systems age out, especially in a building that is between 50 and 100 years. You're going to replace some of these systems, more than twice even. So that's what universities are up against. And as technology improves and energy efficiency becomes more important to operations, it's even more critical in terms of the compounding need. Not only do you have a building that needs to be climate controlled and comfortable and functional, but you want to have it be efficient in terms of operation as well. So that all goes together.
Chad, I have a quick question or a comment even. While we are doing these, are we bringing in smart technology to monitor how we are gonna look at the future energy consumptions and HVAC efficiencies and things like that?
Yeah, Regent Prasker, definitely. I think right now, if you look at the 5-year plan, there's several examples of projects that are energy efficiency intensive, and digital controls is obviously one of the major aspects of that, so that you're updating the technology. You know, there used to be pneumatic controls for climate control systems, and so all of that's going together in addition to a lot of analysis that's going into the feasibility studies for those projects. So
Exactly, the energy consumption for the entire state of Kansas, of course, everywhere else, but state of Kansas is going to relatively increase. So how do we look at consumption of that energy as well, and save when it's needed, and monitor and really look at which assets are consuming more energy than they should. And
yeah, it's a great point, and it's integral to this whole initiative. So this slide just highlights the current building inventory. That top number, 1,134 facilities in use, that's across all of these, what we call ownership categories. All of those categories are state property, except some of the leased space, which is leased from private entities for some functions of the universities. That number is down from last year, approximately 15 facilities. So the inventory has gotten smaller. The mission critical inventory, 489 buildings in the mission critical portfolio, that is down from last year as well, 498 last year. Unfortunately, the average age has increased by 1 year. This slide just simply looks at that inventory by number of buildings. So in this case, you can see that Kansas State University has the largest number of mission critical buildings. But on average, the University of Kansas buildings that are in the mission critical portfolio have a larger square footage footprint. This slide covers that age of the building portfolio. Again, you can see that, I don't know if you can read the color code at the bottom, but red is older than 100 years, yellow is between 51 and 100. And there you have it. I mean, it's almost half.
With a historic.
Now, yeah, so that is by, what I would say is that's by area. It changes slightly if you go by building, but yeah, it's pretty significant and daunting. So if you shift from the building level inventory to what we call the space inventory, or the room by room assignable space, you can see all of these bars at the bottom, three-dimensional bars, are a specific category of space. We use a national standard to all the universities categorize all their room by room space, tally it up. And what you can see here is just under a third of the space is for classrooms, laboratories, offices, and study space. About just right at a third is for special and general use, support and service, health, and housing or residential. And then finally, that large bar on the edge there, a little more than a third, is for all the spaces that are in a building that can't be assigned to a certain function, but are required for the building to function. So corridors, stairways, restrooms, elevators, wall thicknesses, structure and things like that. So you can kind of get a sense for how all that space in a building breaks out. And then these next several slides just look at the space inventory in a similar fashion by university. Probably no surprise, but the academic assignable area by university, certainly University of Kansas and the Medical Center and Kansas State University have the most there. And you can see Wichita and Emporia and Pittsburgh and Fort Hays, commensurate to their size of their universities, follow. Office square footage, we break that out, and each university is doing a number of projects to try to innovate in terms of office use. Things have changed over the last few years, so there's experimentation going on in terms of what type of office space faculty and staff need or want. So things are ever changing in this regard. This again breaks it out by university, classroom, and lab stations. So the actual number of seats in classrooms and seats in instructional labs and open labs. And then finally, just the actual number of instructional spaces broken out by general classrooms, dedicated classrooms, and instructional labs. So I think what you can see here is over the last several years, the universities have all worked hard to develop a consistent approach to tally their room information on an annual basis. Some universities have been doing this for decades, but now we have in place a system whereby that is done in a consistent manner year over year, as well as a tool that helps some of the universities that haven't been doing this too long study their needs in terms of analysis that helps them understand what projects they might prioritize and where they need more space, what kinds of space do they need, what kind of space are they working with. This gives them a tool to really delve into develop projects that are keen use of their space. And then finally, and this is another first, the next 4 slides are a report of the utilization efficiency of classrooms and instructional labs. This first slide shows the dashed line or the goal line up there at 67% or 2/3 efficient, shows the number or the level of efficiency that is a national standard that you would aim for to have your classroom seat fill efficiency metric. So you can see the medical schools, by way of the unique aspects of their operations, kind of exceed that. KU, K-State, and Wichita are moving towards that line. Emporia, Pittsburgh, and Fort Hays are have some capacity there to improve that seat fill. And then, of course, the institutions that are oftentimes looking at evening intensive class schedules and things like that are really probably should have their own target goal there, but this just lines them up together.
Chad, do we have metrics on pre-COVID and post-COVID seat utilizations?
We do have a range of, Regent Prasker, there's a range
I
of
won't say
data out
post-COVID.
there. I will say we have done a fair amount of work to reset the method for this. And so the method that we've done here is kind of the first year of that. I think it would take a certain amount of study and interpretation and maybe translation from those older metrics and isolated studies to get an apples to apples comparison. I would hesitate just to take it at face value and say, well, you're getting worse or you're getting better. There's a lot of variables that went in here. What I will say is looking forward, this method this year, I think we are set up in a good approach so that we can trend this data from here on out on an annual basis. But it could be done. I would just make a little bit of a project of it if you were going to do some comparisons to those. The other aspect of this then is classroom weekly hours used. I do know this has gotten better, and I think that's reporting from each university that they are working hard to make, and you can see there, some of these cases are pretty close to the target. And then same utilization information for instructional labs, seats filled. The target is different here. 80%, these are typically more expensive spaces, equipment, the square foot cost of these spaces is greater. The standard metric for efficiency is a little higher. So you have an 80% goal for efficiency of lab seat fill, and then a 50% of weekly hours used. A little bit less efficient in changeover from class to class. So room to improve here. I know that all the universities are working on this, and all of the universities, as a part of their master plans, I think are intensively looking at developing more and more tools for their campuses so that they can keep a good eye on where opportunities are in this regard. And this is the last slide. This is just an overview of the board's facilities capital renewal initiative since 2020. Starting with the inspections and the space studies that were commissioned then, looking at the 2021 era and the 2022 for policy framework and guidelines that were developed, 23 through 25, which represents the success of the partnership approach for additional investment. And then those next 6 years, 26 through 31, and that longer term program that the Campus Restoration Act represents is it's a momentous start to something that took many decades to get here. We saw that dilemma of deferred renewal and maintenance issue. It'll take some time to turn this around. Several years, you're going to see increases in these numbers. But if not for this approach, it would be out of control in a variety of ways. So it's kind of nice to look at it at a glance there. And Chair Ice, if I could, just before questions, I might, if there are any questions, I just want to provide a thank you and an acknowledgement to everybody who has participated in this. It wouldn't be possible without teamwork. The universities, from COBO and facilities planning and leadership, operations, space management, everybody started this, back in 2020, trying to understand what these studies meant. And now at this point, and I think you've all seen examples of this, the universities are owning this and trying to use it as an opportunity to improve their campuses for their faculty, staff, and students. I would also say on the KBOR side, staff at the board office, finance and administration, DRP, IT, so many people have been involved in setting up new approaches, new tools to bring facilities up to the level that other units have been working on for many, many years. So this is, it's an interesting point to be at and to see the fruits of some of the labor here. And I think it's going to really be crucial through those next 6 years. So want to express those thanks.
We all appreciate all the work everyone's done, including you. Any questions?
No, it's hidden under a bill here. I appreciate Chad being gracious and acknowledging everybody else, but I would just echo Chairman's comments in thanking you for your leadership. I know this is a lot of information, but I can't imagine that any other system of our size with a building portfolio as large as ours having this much information, this detail of information available at their fingertips, and it's extremely valuable as we make decisions. So thank you for pulling it all together.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay. C.L. Flanders.
Yes, this is just a dog pile on. The work that Chad's done has been just fantastic in this area, and also those individual facilities folks at each university. We have better data now than we've ever had. And what's so encouraging is that with the new facilities initiative, universities are already putting together those plans for the entire time of that facility. Now we know you put together a 5-year plan, years 1 and 2 are pretty concrete. 3 is might need to be amended, and 4 and 5 are more directional, because things could change. But this is very different than it was even 5 years ago. And what's interesting is there's states now reaching out to us and saying, what are you doing? So we don't want them to get too attracted to Chad. But it is interesting that we can almost estimate their deferred maintenance liability based on how large their footprint is. And so this is a problem. This isn't a Kansas problem. This is a problem with all state university systems. And I think we've got the best approach on how to solve it.
Yes. Regent Winter.
Yeah, thank you for all your hard work. When this is fully implemented, maybe that's not the right concept, that'll never be fully implemented, but to take 2030, do we have any estimate of the dollar amount decreased of savings, savings in utilities, savings in regular maintenance? I'm interested in what's sort of the fiscal note here, positive.
Regent Winter, that's a good question. I would love to take a stab at it, but I will say that's probably an area of the data that needs the most development. We've certainly worked with with energy managers and business teams on the campuses to try to put numbers to those. And to Regent Parasker's point, understanding how a new technology is going to result in certain operational savings. I think we should definitely focus on that next and try to get a better understanding of what that savings is. It's easier probably to say, hey, we know the HVAC and electrical in that building needs to be replaced, and you put a unit cost to it, and you use the industry standard, RS means construction cost data, and you can basically get close and say, hey, it's this much in terms of deferred maintenance and renewal. In terms of operating costs, we need to develop some tools to have a more consistent understanding of what that is. It hasn't factored into any of these points yet, but it's a great point, and it's not a small number.
And I think in terms of the public's attitude about this, as time goes on and there's more work done on the buildings and more demolition and more renewal, we might start hearing from some people, why are the regions spending so much money on buildings? I think we need to have a monetary answer to that. That we save X amount of dollars every year. To say nothing of the approved academics.
Yeah, it's a good point. We will definitely work on it.
I have another comment.
Please.
While university presidents and chancellor is looking at the assets, especially when I see the labs that are not utilized per our expectations and standards, are we thinking about how do we bring in maybe entrepreneurs or small medium businesses that need those labs that are extremely expensive for them to go find that, but in partnership with the university, can we collaborate and utilize those and turn them into revenue generating spaces for the university?
We certainly do that in conjunction with our KU Innovation Park when we have companies in there that need, or maybe they need it for a period of time until their space is built out, or so we have actually some swing space that we use for that. But a lot of those labs are teaching labs that are not actually functional labs, they're teaching labs. And they're fairly specific, I think, which really limits your ability to flex. I think one of the things, and Chad had a great slide in there, about the kinds of education space, whether it was general use or dedicated.
Yep.
And the dedicated bar, I think, Chad, you would agree, is a lot smaller today than it was when we started this project. And really what the dedicated bar was space that somebody considered they owned. So only the School of X can use this space. And we've really tried to increasingly move away from that to make sure that if space is available and it's needed, somebody can use it, even if it's a different school or a different program. And I mean, that's easier said than done because of central scheduling and all those issues, but we've tried to get a lot more efficient about that.
I'll just add, at Wichita State, you've been on our campus, so you know that some of our labs, particularly on our innovation campus, are used in that way. But what we're thinking about going forward is getting rid of all of our traditional teaching lab space and making more multidisciplinary, reconfigurable. A lot of institutions have done that. Michigan State's one of them that's done a really good job with that. So that's what we're thinking about doing.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, thank you. Any comments on the next one? Or just Chad keeps going? All right, keep going, Chad. You're on a
Okay.
roll.
Okay, so discussion item number 3 on page 96 is to act on the allocation of the Educational Building Fund, or EBF, for FY 2026. The board typically acts to approve the allocation of the EBF at the December meeting each year. In keeping with the tradition going back 15 years or so now, the university shares are shown here, calculated based on a standard formula, square footage, age, and complexity of buildings. And based on the property tax consensus revenue estimate received from the Division of the Budget, the recommendation is an allocation of a total of $58.5 million for FY 2026.
Again, fiscal was in line with it. All right, any comments? If there's none, a motion would be appropriate.
I'd move to approve.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All right, any discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor of this allocation indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries.
Okay, and then
Now, a
finally.
new holiday tradition, right?
Yeah, right. Yes. Yeah, discussion item number 4, page 97 is to act on the allocation of the Kansas Campus Restoration Act for FY 2026. And as most know, this is a new program that establishes 6 years of funding, fiscal year 26 through 31 for the Facilities Capital Renewal Initiative, as well as providing support to the coordinated public higher education institutions. So this provides a $30 million transfer each year for the 6 years, requires a dollar for dollar match for renewal, does not require a match for use for demolishing or raising obsolete buildings. Recommendation is to allocate this $30 million according to that standard formula as well.
Any comments or a motion?
I'd move to approve.
Sir? Second? You, sir? All right, discussion? All right, all in favor of this allocation indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. And first of a new holiday tradition, as I said a moment ago. Okay, I think this is a lovely spot for a break. I've seen a few people need to take advantage of their own break. So let's take a 15-minute break, round it off, resume at 3 o'clock. Thanks, everyone. Let's resume. We need to demonstrate it's okay. We don't, if we break up our flow, we can still get right back together. Otherwise, we'll never take breaks. All right, I think we're ready for Fred Patton.
Ready, baby? You gotta touch it. There it is.
Oh, look at that.
Oh, gosh.
Ooh. Good to see everybody.
Those university presidents are so knowledgeable.
So just a couple quick updates from last month. As I told you, they were going to get together on December 12th to elect leaders, both chambers, House and Senate. They did that. The House, we didn't see any changes in the top three. So you still have Speaker Hawkins, Speaker Pro Tem Carpenter, and Majority Leader Croft. Brandon Woodard will be the new minority leader. He's replacing Vic Miller, who left the House. In the Senate, we still have Senator Masterson. Senator Sykes is continuing as minority leader, and then some changes in the other two positions on the Republican side. Senator Schallenberger, it will be the new vice president, replacing Wilburn, who was originally retiring from the legislature, but now is a House member. Follow along. Senator Blasey is the new majority leader, replacing Senator Alley. We have heard some committee assignments have started to trickle out from the Republicans. Democrats, I think, have been meeting the last couple of days to try to finalize those. But we haven't heard them yet. In the House, we have some changes in House Education. Representative Estes, who was the vice chair, is the new chair of House Education, and Representative McNorton is the new vice chair. So we'll want to get to know them better as the session moves forward. No changes in House Higher Education Committee. We still have Representative Howe as chair and Representative Clark as vice chair. Over in the Senate, Senator Erickson is the new chair of the Senate Education Committee, and former House Chair, House Education Chair Thomas, moved over to the Senate, and he's now the vice chair of the Senate Education Committee. So he certainly knows our issues, and we'll be up to speed when we get there. And again, we should find out the Democrat members of those committees fairly soon, and then we can start working on the entire committee, educating them on your priorities. When it comes to the budget, the governor's still working with her staff to put together her proposed budget. Some information has been shared back and forth. They've asked some questions of the regents, and you have all provided information. Guessing we're not going to get a good idea of what a recommendation will be until that first week of session, or maybe late the week before she reveals it to the legislature. Speaking of the legislature, they are continuing to work through their new budget process. They have their final two meetings today and tomorrow. Higher ed is being discussed. K-State was up this morning. The other institutions tomorrow, as well as the Regents budget. Last week, they removed nearly all supplemental requests. They're kind of resetting the budget basically where it was a year ago, concerned about future revenue forecasts. And so I anticipate they're going to introduce a budget that's going to look pretty much like last year's, and then we'll have to work through the committee process for any enhancements. So that process will be fairly similar, appearing before committees and making requests for additional dollars. Then the only last thing I have is I want to say I'm pleased to share that the System Council of Government Relations Officers, you guys have lots of long names, councils around here, had a retreat last week to talk through your priorities, including those for the upcoming legislative session. Lots of good discussions about how to best advocate for your positions. I'm excited about that process. Another meeting yesterday, and so I feel like the entire team's starting to come together to focus on what you guys want us to do across the street, and so hopefully we're successful. Any questions?
How often will those sorts of meetings occur?
So still relatively new to this process I am. During session, we were meeting once a week. We just come over during lunch and kind of recap where things are at. Throughout the year, I think in the past, they all met maybe the week of board meeting earlier in the week. That didn't always happen this year. But Sean from Pitt State's the new chair of that council, and he seems really on top of things, and I think wants to make sure that not only are meetings happening, but they're a little bit more productive than they might have been in recent times.
He was kind enough to invite me. I had an existing conflict.
Okay.
But any time that's appropriate.
Okay, good.
I'd love to
Yeah.
Participate.
Awesome.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you.
Thank you all.
Kelly Oliver.
Good afternoon. Please turn to page 98 in your agenda, which is the legislative proposals on non-budgetary items. You heard these last month. I won't go through them all again unless you would really like me to read all of these pages. Chair Ice.
I heard you, and I'm not doing email.
No, I know you're not.
Document.
I know you're not.
I don't think we need to read through them all.
Okay, I assumed not, but these are here for second read and action by the board this month, unless you have questions. Either our staff or universities could answer any questions you might have.
Any questions, anyone? Well, you covered them comprehensively before.
I'd move we approve.
Okay, that sounds awesome. Thank you.
Second.
Okay, great. We're a well-oiled machine. So any questions I asked once or comments? All right, hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Kelly. Nice
Thank
job.
you.
Okay. Dr. Lane, we'd like to hear the plan on the blueprint for literacy.
Good afternoon, everyone, and happy holidays. It was a pleasure to be here with you today. This is a second read for you. You'll find the agenda item on page 106. There are 5 things I want to highlight for you, and certainly will answer any questions that you might have. And you do have an update of the budget model at your place. But 5 things include reinforcing for you what the centers of excellence are all about, sharing with you one change that was made by the advisory committee since our last opportunity to meet. Talk about the centers and the 3 constructs in which they are set up, and certainly then review a little bit about our budgeting model and budget process, and answer your questions. First of all, I found that it's always helpful to state clearly what the purpose of the centers of excellence are. And so in the middle of the handout at your sheet, there's 2 graphics. The purpose of the centers of excellence are twofold. One, to equip educators with the current science of structured literacy so they can ensure every child learns to read. So equipping educators, this is a workforce center, if you will. And the second is to provide outreach and partnership to families. So the focus is, this is a post-secondary initiative. As you all know, you're leading the Blueprint for Literacy, focused on preparing educators with the latest science so they have success in the classrooms. So I'd be glad to answer any questions about that. Since we last met, the advisory committee is made up of 25 individuals. We've had 3 additional meetings, and in looking at the plan, they want to offer one change since the last time I was before this body. And that change comes with talking about the qualifications to be an employee of the center. What do the center employees, including the director, literacy coaches, and staff, need to know and be able to do? And how do we know what their qualifications are? So in the plan that's before you today, asking for you to accept the plan, there's a revision to the qualifications. Really what that's talking about is we want our faculty to have the skill sets necessary to truly equip our K-12 educators with the skills they need. So think about things like faculty going through the LETRS curriculum that is designed for educators of educators. Think about assessments that show that the faculty have all the skills and things that they need. That's now included in the plan for the centers. The third thing I want you to focus on.
Get a clarification real quick.
Mhm.
So is that for the people that are going to work in the centers, or is that for the people that are going to be working in under our deans of education and faculty teaching?
Well, the centers are part of the universities, Regent Rolfe, so thank you for that question. But for the center staff to work in the centers, because they're charged with workforce development out in our schools, they must meet those criteria as articulated in the
Is
plan.
there any conversation about just expanding that across anybody who's?
It's a great question. The advisory committee is now involved in their comprehensive strategic planning process, and yesterday was the first day for those conversations, and that came into the room several times. We really need to think about how do we ensure our faculty have the skills they need to do this work. So the center's plan is built on
I've
three
got a
constructs.
question just.
Yep.
So then how would we best ensure that the faculty teaching reading would have those appropriate credentials? Not just the ones in the center, but the ones teaching the pre-service teachers.
Well, I can tell you right now, Dr. Flanders, how the center's staff will be identified. The universities will report to the director of literacy, the staff that have been hired for the centers, and the director is charged by the advisory committee to affirm that they have these credentials. Now, as we expand that to looking at how to support faculty more broadly, then we'll have to put together a process for confirmation of that. So the committee, and Regent Mendoza can add to this, is looking for things that are measurable, that the faculty member doesn't just know the theory, but has evidence that they can apply it with children in classrooms. So I'll bring back a recommendation to you on that. Would you like to add, Regent Mendoza?
I think you said that well, Dr. Lane. One of the things, since we're on this topic, that's kind of been going through my mind is KSD is working to make sure that our in-service teachers have the credentials and the tools that they need. The centers are working on that staff that's going to be working within the center to making sure that they have those supports and those skills. Our pre-service teachers are getting those courses, and so we're focusing on them too. So I think that was the next the next group of people that we needed to focus on is our faculty. What are we going to do to support them? And to Dr. Lane's point, that has come up in the committee. We are in the conversations with that, but we do have to look at how can we support each one of those groups, because they're all supporting others in acquiring those skills. So.
And the science has changed, and so our skill set in higher ed also must evolve. And so I am very confident our literacy faculty have deep knowledge in the knowledge and background of the science of reading. Where we have to get more confidence is the application of that with children in classrooms so they can be effective coaches of teachers who are in those classrooms.
Thank you.
So the plan is based on three constructs. Required elements that'll be common across the network of centers. Shared expertise will be identifying what the universities have, that expertise that needs to be shared across the network of centers. And then finally, developing responses that are unique to the catchment area. We are a diverse state. We have diverse needs. And so this plan is not a cookie cutter where everybody does the same thing in the same way. So the advisory committee has articulated the what needs to be done, not the how. And we'll be asking the universities to bring forward their revised plan that shows how they're going to meet the expectations and what is their detailed budget to do so. So those three things are important. What's required, that will be common across the entire network. What's the shared expertise that each brings to the table that we can learn from and leverage? And then how do we meet the diverse needs of the catchment areas across the state? So the next thing I want to mention to you is the budget model. If you look at the back side of the handout that you have, this is generally the same as it was when we met in November. What I want to stress is the budget model is just a model. It is based on what we've learned from the universities is necessary to start the centers. So standing up the centers this spring, there's an allocation for each center. We'll make some adjustments based on the diversity of the center needs. And then through fiscal year 26, you see that we are allocating of the 10 million blueprint funding, $8.7 million. Now, I can also tell you with confidence that this is not sufficient to meet all of the areas in the plan for the centers and the things that we're asking them to do. It is sufficient to stand the centers up and begin the work. But if interested, I can forecast for you what we believe to be the cost more comprehensively across the next 4 years.
Chairman, I would be interested in that, Dr. Lane. What if you have a feel for, by the time you get to year 3 or 4, what that need might be?
Thank you for that question. I appreciate it. Each of the universities, through their proposal process, put forth a very comprehensive budget. And those allocations were very informative to me, and the advisory committee has asked for a 4-year budget. And so I can tell you year over year, to fully implement the plan, in FY '26, it would be nearly $12 million. And then moving forward into FY '27, about $12.5 million for centers alone to meet the expectations of what we have asked them to do. So be glad to stand for any other questions that you might have. I just want to take the opportunity to thank our universities for the work that they've been doing on the blueprint in total, and particularly on the centers. It's been exciting to see them bring together teams that are really ready to support educators who are already out in the classroom, and to think about how they can do a more robust job of coaching and preparing educators in the future. That's been very rewarding. It's been very challenging as well. And there are a lot of questions about how far should we plan? How much should we proceed? Are we confident that the funding will be present over time? But they've been terrific to work with, and our literacy faculty in particular, that we refer to as the Literacy 7 or the L7, have done extraordinary work over the last 5 months. And they're working this afternoon to finalize their content on our Foundations course that we want to be able to offer teachers. And so I am very grateful for the support that they have given this work.
Other questions or comments? Well, we'd add our thanks to everybody you thank, but also thank you. Appreciate your leadership in this important work.
Thank you, Chair Ice. It's my honor.
I can't see you. Okay, there. Okay. Wait, Regent Winter, do you have a comment?
Thank you. What's the biggest positive surprise that you found from this new job? When we would all have expectations about what the job's going to be like. I'm interested in what the most positive surprise was for you.
I don't know if surprise is right, but the most rewarding piece is that fact that across the 7 public universities and frankly our independent colleges, they are engaged. They want to do this work. They're doing things they've never done before, like co-creating a class across 7 universities that will be the same. I'll be back in January to tell you more about that. But that's been a wonderful experience, Regent Winter, because many think that higher ed doesn't change and isn't willing to move. And I can tell you that we have a lot we need to do, but there are people that understand how vital it is to address the fact that in Kansas, 1/3 of our children cannot read well. And so the thing that's been inspiring is that they've come together at the table and they want to be part of the solution. Oh, I'd be glad to talk with you about that. We can do it offline if you'd like. There are challenges.
I'll speak to one of those actually real quick. And it is the Regent winter season, so you can keep it positive. So I'm gonna piggyback off a little bit of what you said, and this is some of the feedback I've gotten, and I think it's important for us in this room just to internalize this and make sure that we're doing what we can. So this is a board initiative, right? And we're partnering with the state legislature on that. And I continue to hear feedback. The higher ed thinks that they've always been doing this, right? That in our deans and education, professors, we're already doing it. We've already been doing it. If that's true, somewhere between what we're doing in the classroom and when the teachers are getting there with the kids, they're not prepared to adequately be teaching kids how to read with science reading and everything that we have. So there's some place, and I don't question anybody's heart or intention. As we're preparing teachers to teach, we have the best intentions in mind that we're preparing them to be able to handle their students, right? To teach them. We're spending a tremendous amount of money as a state retraining with letters. We're not the only state having to do that. But I think we've got to demonstrate in what we can control, because what happens with literacy, and we've seen it a little bit on this committee, is everybody wants to point at someone else. Well, if K-12 would do this, or if parents would do this, if higher ed would do this. And what we can control and hear is what we do. And so, I want to ask, university presidents to make sure that you're engaged in this, that you aren't just going through your provost, that with the provost, you're talking to your dean of ed, and that you're prepared just to tell us, you know, what are you guys doing differently than you would have been doing 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago around this. Through this blueprint of literacy, what are you doing? It's a board goal. You know, you should expect that we'll cover this topic in reviews, so we'll have a chance to talk about it in the coming months. But it's critical, I think, that you all get involved and help us know that before we're calling other people to action in this, that we're doing everything we can. And again, this isn't critical of the spirit of our professors and what we're doing. I really believe that we've got great people trying to do this. We just got to make sure we're saying, what can we be doing different? What can we be doing to create better outcomes? So I just want to make sure I said that to each of you while you're in the room, and I'll follow up with Chancellor Gerard, kind of the critical nature that we lead in that way, because I want to be able to have an affirmative answer of what we're doing differently than what we were doing before. And I want to thank you, Dr. Lane, for your leadership on all this. I know it isn't easy. Nothing worth doing ever is. So I appreciate that you're standing in the gap.
Thank you very much for that. And I applaud the board connecting all the leaders of the system to this work. Your agenda reflects your priorities, and so having this on your agenda regularly would be beneficial. If I may, the science of reading has changed, and so our universities are correct when they say they were teaching the science of reading. What we now know is that we need to go deeper. It's like thinking about snorkeling versus scuba diving, and we must take our teacher candidates and the folks that are in the field from snorkeling, having some of the skills and some practice, to deep levels of practice, like we expect in the medical field. They need deep practice with experts elbow to elbow so we can ensure that every child learns to read.
And I do think that's where the magic is
Mhm.
it's when it's applied in the classroom. I do think we're getting the philosophy down. But comparing it to nursing or other areas where, you know, there's the applied part of this, I've talked to a lot of teachers that feel like they get it, but once they encounter a kid who's struggling to read, they feel ill-equipped in that part. And the center should help with that. But I do think that's something we can be doing in our classrooms.
Thank you. So I would encourage us to talk about it as structured literacy. That's the change that's happened. Direct and explicit instruction to mastery for children. The prior science said, it's okay if a kid can't figure out how to read a word, have them skip that, have them look at a picture. That theory has been debunked. So now it's direct and explicit instruction that kids need, and frankly, that's how adults need in order to be able to do this work. So thank you for the board's focus on this and making it a priority.
Don't go yet, because Regent Mendoza has a question.
Okay, thank you.
I don't exactly have a question, more of a thought. And I feel like Regent Rolfe peeked over my shoulder and looked at my notes here because he said a lot of what I was thinking. Yes. So being part of the committee, and I know we all know this, not just being part of the committee, but this is a large task, but it's a critical one to propel our state forward, right? We have, as you mentioned, a third of our students aren't able to read, right? And to Regent Rolfe's point, everyone is always really quick to point the finger at the other group. But I feel like I want to challenge each of us to be reflective on our own roles within this initiative. What can we do to make sure that this is a successful initiative for our state, right? So, you know, as leaders, how can you work with the deans and the professors to make sure that, you know, we're doing our part? And I know that we can't exactly control what everybody else is doing, but that's what we can do. Let's be reflective in our work and what our role is in this initiative, because it is critical to our state. And Dr. Lane has done a phenomenal job in leading this committee, and I really appreciate the work that you've put into this.
Thank you. Thank you for your engagement. We also have the business community that we should think about. And so some data that might be helpful to you as you talk to why business leaders should find this important. In the nation, adult literacy is a $2.2 billion negative draw on our national economy. When we analyze that down to what's the impact for adults who didn't learn to read well as children, in our state, it's nearly $190 million of lost economic avenue. So sometimes we're not compelled to move based on thinking about a child or an adult, but oftentimes we'll move when we understand that this is a pocketbook issue for all of us.
Yes.
I just wanted to say too, I'm glad you said that because in speaking with you earlier, like I said, I think it's really important that we have these regional centers of excellence. And I think that the support to the teachers is going to be critical because as they try to apply this, hopefully we'll even have a way where if they have one student that they have an issue with, they can call up and say, hey, what would you suggest? But I'm so glad you brought up the businesses because I've talked to a few folks about this, and that's what many of our businesses are concerned about, and that is employees that can effectively read manuals, especially when it comes to safety and other things. And so hopefully the centers of excellence will be a support to them as well, and maybe even have some clinics and other things where they can come in and be able to train those people on those really, really critical things, associated with manuals and safety and things like that. So I applaud the work. It's good work.
Thank you very much. I am connecting with our adult ed programs and trying to learn more about what we can do in that space. It might be instructive to make sure that the CEOs are well briefed on this. The next step, once you accept this plan, is for the universities to align their proposal to this final plan from the committee, including a detailed budget. Not all universities will be ready to implement their centers at the same time, but my team will be supporting every university to ensure that they can meet the requirements and the budget. But let me reinforce that we've given them a very slim budget to begin this work. And I look forward to talking more with you about what we need to do to pinpoint exactly what resources are needed so they can do the excellent work that they want to do.
Anyone else? All right. Well, thank you again, Dr. Lamb.
Thank you so much.
Okay, is there any other business to come before us? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.